Poštovani gledalci, dobrodošli u N1 na 1. Rijetki su evropski političari koji su dobar ili najveći dio svojih profesionalnih karijera posvetili prostoru Balkana. Mihail Steiner, njemački diplomata, spada u red takvih. Prije gotovo 2,5 decenije Steiner je služio u Sarajevu kao zamjenik visokog predstavnika, a nakon toga i kao specijalni predstavnik generalnog sekretara UN-a na Kosovu. Godinama nije govorio za balkanske medije, ali je pristao govoriti za N1 i pridružuje nam se iz Minhena. Ambassador Steiner, welcome to program N1.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be with you.
Ambassador, let's start this conversation with one very recent and very interesting item or issue here in the Western Balkans, and that's a award of a Nobel Peace for Literature to Austrian writer Peter Handke, who passed is connected to Slobodan Milošević and a negation of a genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina. What is your reaction to that move of a Nobel Committee?
Now, he is undoubtedly a good writer professionally, but I think this is also a signal coming there from Stockholm, and I think it's clearly the wrong signal, seeing his position, which has been always untenable and still is untenable.
Mr. Ambassador, let's move to situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And how do you see Bosnia and Herzegovina today, 25 years almost after you left as a deputy HR from Sarajevo?
It's a little bit sad because I fear that the forces who have stolen from Bosnia its development, its future, I'm talking about the nationalistic forces, seem to be still pretty strong 30 years after, and they have stolen time from Bosnia, and that is a pity, because if you compare it to the development of other countries who have happened to have been on the wrong side in the past, it's a pity because people have lost so much time. On the other hand, there are also some signals in the economic area which are encouraging. I think it boils down to the point that Bosnia-Herzegovina has only one way to go, and that is, of course, towards Europe. And the reason is very simple, because Bosnia has as much an European vocation as every other area in the European Union.
Before I ask you about the Bosnian road towards European Union and NATO, let me ask you this. Can you compare for us High Representative and its role back then in 1990s when you were here with Carl Bildt, and current situation with HR, which is Austrian diplomat Valentin Inzko, and in your time Mr. Bildt has used the bond powers, and now Mr. Inzko doesn't use them. And also the question is, did Russia play the same game when you were here as it plays now in Peace Implementation Council, which is one of the key bodies of HR office in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
First, let me say that I know Valentin Inzko since forever. And I must tell you, I spoke to him recently, and he is committed. I mean, he loves Bosnia. And you can feel it when he talks about Bosnia. I think Bosnia can be very happy to have such a speaker for Bosnia on its side. When it comes to Carl Bildt, in the beginning, he didn't have any bond powers. Bond powers came later. And that was part of our problem right from the beginning. Don't forget that when we were in Dayton, there was only one aim for the international community, and that was to stop the war, to end the war. The civilian side came only as an aftermath. And of course, we made mistakes in the beginning. I mean, one mistake was clearly that the constitutional structure was too complicated. And the second thing was that at that time, nobody was ready for boots on the ground, not the Americans nor the Europeans. They were only ready to come to Bosnia in agreement with those who were before fighting. And therefore, the only option to get the international community engaged was to come to an agreement with all those forces, including the nationalistic forces, so that we had a basis of consent, so that finally the international community with troops and with the civilian element could come. But the problem was that we had, that the international community was naive. Because the thinking was, you just bring democracy to Bosnia via elections, via regular elections, then people will vote for democratic forces, for constructive forces, and everything is fine again. But that was, of course, nonsense, because what a war-torn situation like Bosnia needs is first security, a feeling of security, and then you can vote, then you can express your free democratic sentiments. But first you need security. And this you cannot do just in 6 months or 9 months. In the Dayton Agreement, you have the stipulation that at the latest, in 9 months, we would have to have 3 elections organized by the OSCE. That was absurd. And of course, we fought against it. And why did we have this maximum of 9 months? Everybody thought afterwards we go out and things are solved. Because we had elections in the United States, if you remember, in autumn 96. And this is why no body bags, no mission creep. It should just be over within 9 months. And that was absurd, as we know. The international community is still there. So what I always thought would be, in order to achieve the most urgent thing in the beginning, which is order and a sentiment of feeling safe, of getting the security, we should have had a protectorate, you know, a timeout for Bosnia for 1 or 2 years with full powers to the international community, and then hand it over to the political forces in Bosnia. Instead, what we did was the small halfway approach. And when it comes to money, to costs, it would have been much, much cheaper for everyone, for the Europeans, for the EU, for the Americans, and for the Bosnians, if in the beginning we would have engaged ourselves in a front-loaded way with all the powers to change the situation and then hand it over, instead of this creeping process where we still have the international community there, and where, to be fair, INSCO has a terrible job, seeing that people don't want to engage, and seen, as you rightly said, that the Russians are not playing the most constructive position. That was, in the beginning, already a bit difficult, but much easier than it is today.
Then let me ask you this, based on your words. Who has most responsibility for current situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina? Local leaders such as Milorad Dodik, Bakir Izetbegovic, or Dragan Čović, international community, or both sides equally?
I mean, the simple answer is we all have made serious mistakes and have a serious responsibility. Of course, at the origin are these backwarded nationalistic forces who just worked for their own interest at the detriment of the people. But also the international community thought that it can solve a problem with, the smallest possible engagement. And that was, of course, nonsense. After all, we are talking about Europe. We are talking about our home turf. And surely the European Union has and the EU, all the European countries in total, have miserably failed in this process of which led to the wars in former Yugoslavia. We all made mistakes, no doubt, and we all learned too slowly.
You just have mentioned European Union, and just yesterday European Council has adopted a statement of conclusion regarding Bosnia and Herzegovina, and stating that the Bosnia and Herzegovina doesn't sufficiently fulfill Copenhagen criteria to be granted the candidacy status for membership in European Union. And they said, I quote, needs to dedicate considerable efforts to strengthening its institutions in order to guarantee democracy, the rule of law, human rights and respect for and protection of minorities. What in your view says this of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and what kind of message we are getting from Brussels?
I mean, let's be serious and let's be objective. If you want to be part, and you have to be as Bosnia, of the most important European club, which is the European Union. You need, of course, to do your homework. That is one thing. But it's also a beauty contest. This is something I have very personally experienced in Kosovo a bit later. In Kosovo, the whole of Europe and the Americans had incredible sympathy for the plight of the Kosovars. And then once the war was over, what happened? The Kosovars and the majority people did behave in an unacceptable way towards the Serb minority there. Understandable, but in a way which changed the image of the Albanian Kosovars in the whole of Europe. And now they have to fight against the bad image. So what I'm saying is, you have to do your homework, yes, but you have to be aware that you are also in a beauty contest. You need to have sympathy. If the European Union, if the population in the European Union would say, my God, these Bosnians are doing such a hard work, they are such sympathetic people, and they're trying to play it after the rules, they should come in. That would change, of course, also the attitude of politicians. But if you don't have the best image, then it's more difficult to do what is necessary. That means to give you an concrete perspective towards accession. So it's a beauty contest also. So whether you like it or not, you have to do everything that also the population, because enlargement in Europe in the European Union is not very popular in the moment. So we have to make it popular. And in order to do that, we need to show the Bosnians as trying everything to get on the right track. And of course, nationalism or backward positions from politicians, as you have mentioned them, are not helping at all.
My next question is related to another, if I may use your words, a beauty contest, and that is NATO integrations of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have seen what happens with the rest of the region. Most of the countries are members of NATO at the moment. Do you see Bosnia and Herzegovina as a NATO member in near future, despite those claims of military neutrality from Republika Srpska and claims of Mr. Dodik that he will align Bosnia and Herzegovina to Serbia when it comes to NATO?
No, that is really a problem. And this, of course, not only in contradiction to what has been agreed before in Bosnia, but of course NATO cannot force a path on Bosnia. It must come from the inside. There is no question about that, and that doesn't help. There, I think, together with INSCO, you need to try to overcome this difficulty, because, of course, one thing is clear. As Bosnia needs to be part in the European Union because it's its natural vocation, and it's, by the way, let me say that, I mean, you can criticize a lot in the European Union, and not everything works well. But don't forget, over all this criticism, it doesn't work well in other places in the world either. Do you think the United States is functioning in a better way? Do you think it is better in Russia or in China? No, it's not. Relatively spoken, if you have a choice, I mean, if I had a choice, I would, of course, would like to live and be part of the European Union, because it's working much better than most of the places in the world. And when it comes to NATO, of course, it's the natural vocation also of Bosnia to approach NATO, because it's the place where the Europeans organize their stability and security.
My next question to you is, you were advisor to Gerhard Schröder, former Chancellor of Germany for Foreign Affairs, and you spent the most of your career as a foreign officer of German government. What kind of role Germany plays today in Bosnia and Herzegovina? In the past we saw Anglo-German initiative for Bosnia. Now we have, if I may say, Franco-German quarrel about the region. What kind of impact and influence Germany has here in Bosnia?
You know, I hesitate always that we divide countries. I don't like the idea that the French has a certain position, the Germans have a certain position, because that brings us back into the wrong corner of history. What we need to have is a common approach. And of course, by history, Germany is very friendly towards Bosnia and has a lot of sympathy for the European perspective of Bosnia. But what we need, and what we also see now in the political positioning, is the most important thing is that we get a united position, and that we understand in Europe that it's in our proper interest that a place which is so European in the end, like Bosnia, needs to be also part of the organized form of Europe.
I have several more questions, and I will ask you for shorter answers. We know that the Balkans was always place of trouble and bad connections, if I may say like that. But how do you see today relations in the region, especially on the line Croatia, Bosnia and Serbia?
Now, if we look realistically at the situation, seeing also how difficult it is for each of these countries, I think we cannot deny that the situation is better now than it was 20, 30 years ago. So there is a positive development. But it is very slow, no doubt. And it is because of this burden of the past. And it is because of this burden as the nationalistic forces have stolen away 30 years from most of these countries. So it could be better. And of course, what combines and what could improve these situations is a more organized and smoother path towards Europe.
You have been a special representative on Kosovo just years after the end of military actions over there, and you know situation very well. Do you expect that in a soon future we can see agreement between Pristina and Belgrade?
That depends very much on the actors. It is a very difficult thing, but in the end, there is no alternative to that.
My next question is related actually to the players. New European Commission with Ursula von der Leyen, who's a German former defense minister. You probably know her very well as a German politician. Started their work. New High Representative for Foreign Policy and Security is a Spaniard, Josep Borrell, and a Commissioner for Enlargement is Oliver Várhelyi, who comes from Hungary. Do you see that those two men can make some sort of better situation in the Western Balkans, and can Ursula von der Leyen be a better president of European Commission compared to Jean-Claude Juncker?
Now, Juncker was a very successful, under the given circumstances, president, I must tell you. But the good news is that the three persons you have mentioned are professionals. They know what they are talking about, and I think they have all three understood how important it is to get Bosnia back on track towards its natural aim. So I think these three personalities are good news for Bosnia.
We have another player here in the Western Balkans who's almost missing for the last decade, and that's United States of America. Just recently, State Secretary Mike Pompeo has named a new special representative for the region, Matthew Palmer, and some are calling for a new special representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. What do you see from that move by Secretary Pompeo, and do we need a new special representative for Bosnia?
My advice to Bosnia would be, your priority long-term must and should be Europe. Yes, it helps. Yes, we need the United States because the United States were also at the birth of peace in 95, but the main effort needs, and it might be difficult, but needs to go in the direction of Europe. That is your priority. No doubt about that.
But some politicians here in Western Balkans, especially in Serbia and Republika Srpska, are working closely to Russia. Can that derail road of Bosnia and Herzegovina towards European Union and NATO?
It is a complication. There is no doubt about that, but it is a complication based on a wrong long-term judgment. Maybe short-term, this might bring those who are trying to go this path an advantage. Long-term, not. Because look at the geography. Look at the situation, at the political, the social, the economic situation in Europe, and compare it to the other actors. It's much better here. And I'm speaking about the situation of ordinary people. I'm speaking about the situation of you and me. I'm not talking about, grand political allures. I mean, look at the situation within Russia, and is this the country you want to rely on long term? It should be it should not have a nuisance factor. But where you want to go is, of course, where life is much better and much easier and better organized. And that is surely the European Union, despite all the difficulties.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure to speak with you after so many years.
May I say just one word? Because this morning I woke up and I was thinking about, places in Bosnia like Sarajevo, like Tuzla, Prijedor, Mostar, Banja Luka, what have you. And you know, the strange thing is, I'm from Munich. I live here in Munich, and I'm very happy to be here. But I had this feeling of feeling homesick for Bosnia. I miss you.
Thank you once again. Poštovani gledaoci, bio je ovo ekskluzivni razgovor s njemačkim diplomatom i bivšim zamjenikom visokog predstavnika u Bosni i Hercegovini Mihajlom Štajnerom. Hvala vam na pažnji i ostanite uz program N1. Doviđenja.